It's 6 o'clock. This is Sky News, live from Buckingham Palace on the third day of national celebrations for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee.
Storming me down, aren't you?
The Palace has said that the Queen will miss this year's Epsom Derby due to mobility issues. Newly released footage from Sandringham shows her lifelong love of horses. The 96-year-old monarch is expected to cheer on her favourite horses on TV at Windsor Castle. This evening, Charles and William will appear on stage to pay tribute to the Queen at a star-studded Jubilee concert. Also ahead, with members of the royal family to visit all 4 nations of the UK, we'll look at what the monarchy means to Wales. And from pomp to punk, how the Queen has shaped the culture of the nation. Also to come this morning in the sport, England face an uphill battle to save the first test at Lord's against New Zealand. And we'll review how this morning's newspapers are reporting the Jubilee celebrations, including Harry and Meghan's appearance at St Paul's yesterday. Hello, good morning from Buckingham Palace on the third day of national celebrations for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Now, later today, Princess Anne will stand in for her mother at today's Epsom Derby. The monarch is a passionate horse owner and breeder, and she was due to be greeted on the course with a special guard of honour, including 40 of her past and present jockeys. Instead, she's expected to watch on television at Windsor Castle. Well, here at Buckingham Palace, the stage is being set for tonight's Jubilee concert, and we're told that Charles and William will appear on stage later to pay tribute to the Queen at this star-studded event that's going to have all sorts of people taking part, from Sir Elton John to Duran Duran. That's later on tonight. So let's take a look ahead to the day ahead of us. I'm joined here by royal commentator Viscountess Hitchingbrook, Julie Montague. She's going to be with us throughout the morning, so really
Great.
lovely to have you with
Thanks
us,
for having
Julie.
me.
So let's look ahead to today then. We've got the Epsom Derby this afternoon, and we learnt yesterday that sadly the Queen's not going to be there in person, presumably because of those mobility issues that meant she didn't make the St Paul's service either. How much of a disappointment do you think that'll be for her? I mean, we know that she loves racing and she loves horses.
Well, I think it will be a huge disappointment, just like yesterday was. You know, the service of Thanksgiving, we know how important religion has really steered her throughout her 70-year reign. And again, the horses give her pleasure. You know, that's the thing that she absolutely loves. And for her to miss this, you know, we must now think that she really is suffering from mobility issues. To not attend the service yesterday, and of course, to not to be there today, also to receive, you know, the award and the excitement from the crowd. So I think it's a real, I'm sure she's saddened and in fact almost heartbroken that she can't. But, you know, this is the Queen. Celebrations will still go on.
And they've released some pictures today back from April of the Queen with her horses at Sandringham. And you don't even need to see those pictures just to know that she's passionate. You can see her face light up, can't you, when you see her looking at horses and watching the racing, or whether it's at one of the official state events.
Exactly. And, you know, these 4-day celebrations were really, you know, evolved around what the Queen loves. We've got the service of Thanksgiving yesterday at St. Paul's. Again, we know how important religion is a part of her life. And then today with the Epsom at Epsom. And I think, you know, those two things really sort of stand out as when we define and we look at the Queen of what has guided her in her life, religion, but also the things that she gets such pleasure from, which are horses. And so this 4-day event really did focus on the things that she loved, and it's a real shame that she will, of course, miss it, but understandably.
Well, yes, and we understand that she was keen to have that as part of the programme over the 4 days. The other event, though, of course, that we've got this evening is being prepared for behind us. The stages are literally being set in front of Buckingham Palace. I mean, it's going to be a spectacular venue, isn't it,
yes,
for a concert. And tell us a little bit about what you think the thinking is behind having a concert like this, which has got a range of different music. And I think we've got lots of sports stars and big figures like Sir David Attenborough expected to be a part of it. What's the ambition with it, do you think?
Well, I think the ambition is for all of us. So, again, this is going to give us, the viewer, real pleasure in this as well. I don't think there was really any expectation that the Queen would be here. Instead, we see that Prince Charles and Prince William will be here as well. But I think it's really a span of her 70 years. Having somebody like David Attenborough there really does represent, you know, this span of her 70-year reign.
I think he's the same age, actually, isn't he?
He is the same age. And they're very good friends, we know that. So I think, again, it's a celebration of these 70 years, not just what's happening now, but, you know, of the past and sort of memories of the past and evoking those memories for all of us of her 70-year reign.
And as you say, perhaps reaching out to all age groups.
Absolutely.
And including everybody.
Absolutely.
Stay with us, because I do want to take us through how the papers have reported on yesterday's Jubilee celebrations. Let's take a quick look at them, shall we? And starting with the Mirror, Together Yet Apart, that's their headline. They're referring to the Cambridges and the Sussexes all attending the Queen's Jubilee service yesterday, but still keeping their distance. And that's the same story on the front of the Daily Mail as well. So far apart is their headline. The Times, meanwhile, has words from the Archbishop of York as he pays tribute to an absent Queen at that St Paul's service. And the service is also on the front of the Express this morning. That's the image there you can see of the congregation. The headline is "We Give Thanks." And it's a similar sentiment on the front of the Daily Telegraph. Thank you for staying the course. That's a reference to the Archbishop of York's sermon. And The Guardian says, with no Queen in attendance and the next generation of royals gathering in her place, it seems like we were witnessing a new age for the monarchy. So it's interesting, isn't it, what the papers have chosen to focus on, and perhaps no surprise that a number of them really honed in on the fact that we saw William and Harry separated by an aisle in St Paul's Cathedral. How do you think that was handled? Do you think there was no choice because the Sussexes are now no longer working royals, or do you think it was sort of practical thinking we don't want the cameras focusing in on whether or not they're going to converse?
Right. Do you know what? I think it's a balancing act right there. I think this is exactly what the Sussexes didn't want. They didn't want to be the center of attention while they're here, and we wake up this morning, and they're on most of the front pages, you know, wondering, is this rift still continuing? And that's probably what they didn't want. They have kept a very low key since arriving here. They didn't go to the lunch after the service of Thanksgiving at St. Paul's yesterday. So, you know, I think this is something that the royal family didn't want to see on the papers. They don't want this to be taking away from the spotlight of this 4-day celebration of the Queen, but alas, it has, and we see it all over the papers. I think, you know, nothing happens by chance. I do think that there was a reason that Harry and Meghan walked down the aisle into the church, into the cathedral by themselves. That was probably something that perhaps the Queen had suggested, that they weren't walking down with Zara or other cousins. But again, where they were seated, yes, I'm sure that this was meticulously planned so that there weren't any glances, so that, you know, nobody could catch them on camera looking at each other and then looking away like we have seen before in the past. So I think a lot of it has been orchestrated to make sure that, you know, the media didn't get, I think, perhaps what many people were looking for. But by having them separated, they're still on the front page today.
Well, yes, and in some ways they can't win, can they? I mean, you know, if they keep a low profile, people say that they're perhaps a bit, you know, separated from the royal family, as some of those headlines suggest. If they're too high profile, people say they're a distraction from the Queen, who this weekend is all about.
Every step Meghan and Harry make here, well, at least while they're in the public eye, and I don't know if we'll really ever see them again. Everybody's going to be...
This weekend, you mean?
Yeah, this weekend, right, you had this weekend. I don't know if we will see them again this weekend. I mean, there has been no reports on if they're coming to the concert this evening. But I think every step that they make over these next couple of days are still going to be watched, because people are looking for the body language. They're looking for the glances. They're looking to see how they communicate. And that's again, I think that's what the Sussexes wanted to avoid. They don't want to be the center of attention. And again, they are. They're on the front page of most of the papers this morning.
And this weekend is obviously about communities coming together to celebrate these 70 years, this constant throughout so many of our lives. There are few of us that remember the previous monarch. But it's also about family as well, isn't it? Our own families, but also their family. I mean, could this be a time of healing of any rifts? And we don't know how deep they are, do we? It's all speculation.
Of course, it's all speculation, and I think everybody wants this healing to happen. And perhaps that's why they are, splashed on the front pages today, because we didn't get a hint of that healing. We didn't see, them mingling with, in particular, William and Kate, and of course, Charles and Camilla. We didn't see the Sussexes mingling with them. They didn't go to the drinks and the lunch afterwards. And that was an opportunity for them to, again, mingle. So you do have to question, what is their relationship? And, of course, it's a lot of, who knows? It's up in the air and a lot of guessing and speculation.
OK, Julie, for the moment, thanks very much indeed. I'm pleased to say you're not going to be too far away all morning, exactly. But for the moment, thank you. So the Jubilee celebrations are well underway, as you will have noticed. But let's see what's still to come across this long weekend. Well, it's Derby Day, as we said. The Queen would usually be expected to attend the races at Epsom Downs, but will be represented this year by other members of the royal family. And this evening, thousands are expected to attend a special concert outside Buckingham Palace. Performers include Sir Elton John, Diana Ross and Eurovision's Sam Ryder. On Sunday, millions will take part in a big Jubilee lunch. People across the UK will celebrate at events in their own communities, from a mile-long street party to backyard barbecues. And closing the festivities will be the Platinum Jubilee pageant, when thousands of performers make their way down the Mall in central London. Now, today we'll also see senior royals visiting all 4 UK nations. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge will be heading to Cardiff, a spot likely chosen given that William will inherit the title of Prince of Wales when his father becomes king. Dan Whitehead has been in Port Talbot, finding out what people there think of the royal family.
In the shadow of the steelworks, a party is underway. For Carmarthen's community, it's a chance to raise a toast, but also reflect on what the monarchy, and specifically the role of Prince of Wales, means to those living here.
I am a royalist. I think he has a role, but we don't relate as much to him as we do to the Queen.
I think the majority of people in Wales do agree with the monarchy.
I think he should be the last Prince of Wales. As much as we respect him, he hasn't done that much for Wales as a country. He very much represents Great Britain. So I think it's about time that we had somebody to represent the country of Wales, in Wales.
The royal title of the Prince of Wales dates back to England conquering the nation in the 13th century. Nowadays, while more symbolic, some experts believe attitudes to the title are changing.
If we look back to, say, the Victorian period onwards, there has been a huge pride within Wales that the heir to the throne was the Prince of Wales, because it was seen as something that made Wales important. As we move forward in time and kind of Welsh nationalism has grown, that kind of pride in it has ebbed away somewhat. It's become more controversial.
A recent poll by Cardiff University found 55% of people in Wales support having a monarchy, while 28% would rather have an elected head of state.
While it is, of course, a weekend of celebrations, the Queen's milestone puts into focus the role of the royal family here in Wales, and for younger generations, just what the future of the monarchy means to them. So who do you prefer, Charles or William and Kate?
William.
And why is that?
Because we both got Williams in our class. Because they've got kids and they're like really kind.
I think perhaps the people's popular choice would be William and Kate, because they are younger. Perhaps we can relate to them more. They have young children. How important it is to Wales? I think it is really important, actually. Yeah, I think it is part of the sort of Welsh identity.
Happy Jubilee!
The image of the royals differs between the generations. And while there is support, many feel the monarchy's role in Wales may need to reform in the years to come. Dan Whitehead, Sky News, in Port Talbot, South Wales.
Well, we've got more Jubilee coverage to come, but first let's take a look at some of the day's other headlines. And at least 4 people have been killed and dozens of others have been injured after a train derailed in southern Germany. Police say it had been heading to Munich and had been quite full at the time that it crashed. Prosecutors and police have started an investigation into the cause of the incident. UEFA has sincerely apologised to all fans affected by the chaotic events at last Saturday's Champions League final. European football's governing body announced on Tuesday that it had launched an independent review into the access issues that led to fans being crushed and tear-gassed outside Stade de France in Paris before Real Madrid's 1-0 win against Liverpool. The Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, has vowed that the UK will never stop supporting Ukraine. In a statement marking 100 days of the war last night, she warned Vladimir Putin cannot win. She also added that Russia's unjustified and illegal invasion threatened world peace and economic stability. Well, I can give you the exclusive news that it is likely raining here in central London, but let's get all the rest of the weather now.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, high pressure will exert influence over northern parts of the country for the rest of the weekend, whilst a thundery low will spread into the south from the near continent. I think I might be feeling that now. Overnight, low cloud will spread in across eastern coast to reach some central areas. In the south, torrential, heavy and occasionally thundery showers will reach southernmost counties. By dawn, the showers will have reached southern and central Wales, as well as parts of the Midlands.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Hello, a very good morning. It's just gone 6:30. You're watching Sky News Breakfast live from Buckingham Palace. And a reminder of our top stories here for you this morning. Buckingham Palace has confirmed that the Queen will miss this year's Epsom Derby due to ongoing mobility issues. Newly released video shows the 96-year-old monarch's lifelong love of horses. And 2 future kings, Princes Charles and William, will pay tribute to the Queen on stage at a concert tonight to celebrate her 70 years on the throne. So let me bring back in now our royal commentator, Viscountess Hinchinbrook, Julie Montague, who's with us throughout the morning, I'm very happy to say.
Thank you.
So, Julie, we were saying there in our headlines the news that the Queen won't be attending the Epsom Derby this afternoon. We discussed it a little bit earlier, no doubt disappointing to her. But do you think that means that we're unlikely to see her again this weekend?
Well, I think this is the million-dollar question. Will we see her tomorrow? You know, sort of for the closing out of the 4-day celebration. And I think that's what everybody's trying to understand. And I don't think we're going to get an answer. I think it's a day-by-day sort of issue, really, with her mobility and how she's feeling. And so that's why we're finding out about, you know, her not arriving or not being able to attend certain events at the last minute. So,
and there were no real kind of guarantees given at the start, were there?
No.
They've kept everything open, haven't they? Because they've obviously realised that she has got the mobility issues, and it's extremely tiring, isn't it? Events like these. I mean, just smiling and being nice to people all day must be fairly tiring.
Of course. And, you know, the palace was always very clear in their messaging that they would hope that the Queen would be able to make certain events, but it was never a guarantee. And if you just look back yesterday at the service of Thanksgiving, and we'd know about her mobility issues, that would have been, I think a real strain on her. Just walking down to the front, I think would have been, quite difficult for her. So it does make sense. And I think spending the day at Epsom today would have, again, been another strain on her. I think she is, and I think a lot of people are hoping that she's saving herself and her energy for tomorrow to be able to, give the nation and give the world sort of another glimpse of her. And throughout this 4-day celebration, we're started with the Queen, and I think everybody's hoping that we will end with her as well.
Well, that's right. 3 appearances, rather, on that first day, on the Thursday, which some people were surprised that we saw her as much as that then. And today, the other celebration today that's going on behind the scenes is for Lilibet's first birthday, Lilibet being Harry and Meghan's younger child. Do we know anything about whether the Queen might be involved in that? Might we see a photograph of the Queen with Lilibet? And this is all speculation?
It's all speculation, but perhaps we know that Meghan and Harry are staying at Frogmore, so they're very nearby. I would be surprised if, they didn't somehow try to at least get in there and have, a cup of tea or a cake with Granny. So, but that will never be reported to us. But they are, they are not in London, Meghan and Harry. They are very near to the Queen, and it is Lilibet's first birthday. We've only seen one photo of her before, and that was that Christmas card that they put out. I think a lot of people will be hoping, will they, produce a photo? But I think we know the answer to that. No, they are very, very protective of, their family, and they've had this issue with security in the past. So I don't think anybody should get their hopes up in seeing a picture of Lilibet.
And we're seeing one picture that they did release, but I haven't seen many others. So you're right. They are very cautious about that. So we'll have to wait and see. But let me just take a look back, because we're here, of course, to talk about the Queen's 70 years on the throne. So let's just take a look at some of the Queen's milestones. And this year, she became the world's 3rd longest reigning monarch in history. Over her 70 years of service, the Queen has been served by 14 prime ministers, the first being Winston Churchill. There have also been 14 US presidents during her reign, with the exception of one, President Lyndon B. Johnson. She's met all of them. The Queen's been on 271 foreign trips, visiting over 100 countries as monarch. She's only missed one Christmas broadcast during her 7 decades on the throne. And known, of course, for her love of corgis, the Queen has owned more than 30 dogs, most of them descending from her first corgi, which was gifted to her on her 18th birthday in 1944. I feel quite tired just reading all that out.
No.
That is a lot of work over a lot of years. And it's a reminder, isn't it, that she's been that constant throughout all of our lives.
Yeah, I mean, that was extraordinary what you just said. I mean, 14 prime ministers, 14 presidents, 30 corgis. And I mean,
that's more corgis than presidents.
Exactly. But, that's the wonderful thing about the Queen. And, as an American, sometimes I wish that we had something or someone like the Queen who unifies. We're in this period now that's very divisive, with what we've seen over the past couple of years, turbulence really past couple of years with war, with a pandemic, with Brexit. But the Queen has been this constant. She's a unifier. And I think she's not only a unifier here in this country, but around the world. Sometimes I like to think of her as similar to the Dalai Lama, world recognition, and someone who really conveys this compassion and kindness and steadfast of hope for others.
Because even amongst people who are anti the monarchy, you'll find very few people who don't have enormous respect for her and recognise her kind of unflinching sense of duty and stoicism.
Absolutely. Out on the Mall on Thursday, I was out on the Mall, and there were, crowds and crowds of people, and they all had different political preferences, but they were unifying together because it was the Queen, because the Queen is apolitical, and she has been this constant source, I think, of support and a real sense of a rock, like a steadfast rock for people to turn to in times of need and for that comfort.
Well, Julie Montague, pleased to say that you'll be back with us a little bit later.
Absolutely.
But for the moment, thanks very much indeed. Well, while the Queen may have to watch today's events on TV from Windsor, the nation will continue to come out over the weekend and celebrate the 70 years of her reign. Sky's home editor Jason Farrell, with the help of a Morris Minor, has been busy capturing the defining moments of the Elizabethan era.
The Queen comes from an era where things were built to last. Her Jubilee is a celebration not just of a long-lasting monarch, but of where we've come from and who we are today. 7 decades ago, the first type of Morris Minor was rolling off production lines. Post-war Britain looked to the future and did so with a new, youthful monarch who'd served as a mechanic and truck driver in the war, earning a respect within the military that has only grown.
Our Captain General, the person who we work for, effectively, in every way. For the longest time she's been in charge of the army. It's who we all take our commission for, who signs our royal warrants when we take the oath. So she means a great deal.
In Abingdon, near to where the Morris Minor was made, there's an exhibition to celebrate this second Elizabethan era. The Queen's long reign is a living thread to any moment in British history since the war.
The Queen opened this very building in 1956, and she's been on a journey with us up until present day, opening scientific establishments in the area.
Pandemonium paid a visit to the USA. 4 shaggy minstrels, the Beatles.
Under her reign, Britain has led the way to a more creative, liberal and open global society. But there's been a painful transition from an industrial-led nation to a more financial, service-based economy that has benefited some more than others. Globally, the country's transitioned from ruling nations to maintaining the closest possible ties. And in that, the Queen's role as the head of the Commonwealth is seen by many as crucial. There was testament to it in the crowds flocking to celebrate her life.
She came to Uganda. We are from Malawi, some of us.
Malawi.
Here we are just different countries.
When we look at those trips that she did around the Commonwealth, were they important? Do they matter? Why do they matter?
They brought, love to the community. They brought the togetherness and knowing that she's selfless, traveling and making impact to the globe through the ways, charitable deeds.
That's when we see even new roads being built. Yes. Everything is revamped. Yeah. Everything is renewed because the Queen is coming. In Uganda, we had a Queen's Way. Oh, really? And that was the highway, and it was a beautiful way.
So,
when she came,
royalty means a new road.
Oh, yes, yes.
The Queen can attract numbers that even rock stars couldn't pull. And in an ever-changing world, she remains something familiar, predictable, unchanging. So she still commands ceremonial majesty, and the crowds still stop and cheer when her car unexpectedly arrives in the palace entrance.
70 years ago, we lived in a country which was bound by deference. It was a class-ridden society. It was a society which was very constrained and restrained. The monarchy now reflects, as it did 70 years ago, the society of 2022, and that takes a lot of care and it takes leadership, and I think it was the leadership of the Queen in particular to understand that changes were required, but in a very gradual way.
In recent times, the Queen has remained a symbol of unity. Addressing the nation during COVID, she sent a reassuring message. We will be with our friends again, we'll be with our families again, we will meet again. And even setting an example at her husband's funeral, sat alone while the world watched. But behind all the ceremony and formality, she has remained an enigma, a largely unknown woman. In a world that is now flooded with opinion, we still don't know what she's thinking. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
I'm very pleased to report that it has stopped raining for the time being, but I'm going to fill you in on the rest of the weather now across the country.
Warm memories wherever you go.
To fly,
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, high pressure will exert influence over northern parts of the country for the rest of the weekend, whilst a thundery low will spread into the south from the near continent. Low cloud, having spread across the eastern coast to reach some central areas, will give a dull start to the day. In the south, torrential and occasionally thundery showers will reach southernmost counties.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, coming up after the break, we're going to take you through all the Jubilee coverage in this morning's papers, and there's an awful lot of it. Well, it's time to take a look through the morning papers now and what they made of yesterday's Jubilee celebration. So here with me to go through the papers are royal historians Tessa Dunlop and Kate Williams. Very good to see you both. How are we enjoying the festivities so far this long weekend?
Well, it's been spectacular. It's been incredible. And the weather's played ball, but I'm not sure about today.
You just said it's raining as you came out, but it's spitting very slightly. I'm getting slightly obsessed with this and I'm giving regular updates of the weather. We'll go through your selections in just a moment, but first let's take a look through those front pages, shall we? And starting with the Mirror, together yet apart, the Cambridges and the Sussexes all attending the Queen's Jubilee service, but still keeping their distance. And it's the same story on the front of the Mail, so far apart is their headline. The Times has words from the Archbishop of York as he pays tribute to an absent Queen at the St Paul's service. And that service is the front image on the Express this morning with the headline, "We give thanks." And a similar sentiment leads the Telegraph. Thank you for staying the course, they say. The Guardian, meanwhile, points out that with no Queen in attendance and the next generation of royals gathering in her place, it seems like we were witnessing a new age for the monarchy. And away from the Jubilee, the Eye leads with the leadership concerns within the Conservative Party and a warning from Boris Johnson's allies to the rest of the party that without him at the helm, they'll lose. The Financial Times, meanwhile, reports a multi-million-pound lawsuit has been filed against administrators of the collapsed Woodford stock market fund to try to recoup the money lost by investors. While the Star reveals that beer bellies are bad for your love life. I really hope we're talking about that one. I suspect we're not.
Not now.
No, not now. Maybe we'll save that up for later because I want to know the details of that one. Anyway, we're going to kick off with a lot of the papers dominated by the Jubilee celebrations, the majority of them. You picked out the Times, Kate, and this their headline reflects what the Archbishop of York said yesterday at the Thanksgiving service.
Well, yes, all the papers, huge Jubilee coverage. There are pictures so big of some of the royals, they could be posters. And this story from the Times really is about the Archbishop's very last-minute sermon. The Archbishop of Canterbury had COVID, so the Archbishop of York gave the sermon, talking about how the Queen wasn't there, but is still in the saddle, and really reflects how she isn't going to be able to be at all these Jubilee events, but she's still the Queen. She is not leaving. She's not going anywhere. She's still here. She's still a significant figure.
And yet, obviously, there was a poignancy to the fact that the Queen wasn't at her own Thanksgiving service. And yet we did see, of course, Prince Charles representing her there. And you're getting a sense over this weekend, aren't you, with Princess Anne stepping in at the Epsom Derby this afternoon, of a sort of gradual handing over of some duties.
Yeah, and I think in some ways that'll do Charles favours, and indeed it already has. We saw him opening Parliament not so long ago and then trooping the colour, taking the salute, and he's sort of acquiring the trappings of state. And you sort of grow with the institution in that context, and we see Charles then in this different, more majestic setting, and it's less about the individual and more about monarchy.
Yeah, interesting stuff. And you wanted to focus in on the service itself, and it's hit some of the front pages. You've picked out a double-page spread as well in the Mail, and basically the seating arrangements.
Please, this is all about the soap opera for some of the papers. They've got their long lenses in on lots of different individuals. I mean, how are you meant to sit for an hour-plus long service in St Paul's with ramrods straight back, eyes to the front, if you want to avoid the long lens?
In case someone snaps you.
Yeah, now, they make a big thing of this kind of, the brothers still apart. Well, the way it was choreographed, the sort of working rods were on one side, predominantly, and the Sussexes off to another side with the sort of, well, as Richard Kay puts it, the also-rans of the family, which is a little bit bit harsh, I think, for a dear Thanksgiving service. But yeah, William looking up to the gods, and likewise Harry, both sort of as if they're staring for the answers. And I thought then it was rather sort of poetically picked up that he wasn't looking up at the gods, Boris Johnson, but down at the floor in the long lens picture of him. And of course, he was booed as he went into the cathedral, and likewise when he left. And this has been picked up, you know, a sort of ceremony, a celebration of Britishness, predominantly female royal fans outside the cathedral. Normally, a Conservative Prime Minister would expect something of a cheer.
Well, yes, and there were a few cheers, I think, but there were also an awful lot of boos, weren't there?
Quite limited,
what do you think, Kate, about the seating arrangement? I mean, was that purely as per protocol? They're not working royals anymore, the Sussex, so they were going to be on the other side of the aisle? Or do you think that was a deliberate attempt to avoid the snappers and avoid any kind of scrutiny of what conversations they had with the rest of the family?
I do think there's been a desire to find a soap opera there, because really there was so much criticism before the Sussexes even arrived, saying they might overshadow, and the reason why they might overshadow is because everyone takes pictures of them rather than the other royals, rather than Charles and Camilla, and everyone's so, you know, fascinated by this soap opera. And really underneath it all, I think what I saw there was a family supporting the Queen. Harry and Meghan were there, they seemed very happy. It was a family supporting the Queen, so trying to find riffs and excess, I think, is sort of, you know, wild obsession with sort of trying to really, we're following on from the long times in which there was so many attacks on Meghan. But I think, you know, I was out there by St Paul's and there were huge cheers for the Sussexes when they arrived. People were really thrilled to see them back.
There's also, how do you spin the story? I noticed that some of the commentary of the family going into the cathedral, it was said, well, the Queen's given the Sussexes a special chance so they can ceremoniously proceed down the aisle alone, a moment to themselves, not just with all the rest of the family and the cousins. And yet, if you read some of the press today, oh, they were demoted. That's one of the headlines. They were demoted. So it very much depends, you know, who you believe and what you choose, which story you choose to buy into.
Interesting. Let's move on, because there's a story actually inside the Times, isn't there, that you wanted to focus on, and it's really a look back at some of the key events in the Queen's life, as I understand it.
Yes, so what we've got here is this, in the Times, a big survey of what's going to be going on today and tomorrow, the Derby, the Platinum Palace, and the pageant. So the pageant on Sunday, well, fingers crossed it's going to be, you know,
good
sunny.
weather.
We remember the Diamond Jubilee when we were all out there freezing on the river. And really, it's going to really commemorate not just the Queen, but also her reign since 1952. And, you know, there's going to be everything from vintage cars to Daleks. And what I'm fascinated by is in the state coach we're going to see is apparently it's going to be a video of the Queen, which is going to look completely realistic, the young Queen waving, a bit like the ABBA, you know, we've got these ABBA holographs.
The avatars,
and
yeah.
I'm wondering whether this really is the future of monarchy, that she is the most travelled Queen, she's been around the world 40 times, maybe in the future we're going to have monarchy as an avatar.
Well, yes, and she'll probably be very grateful not to be in that coach, but I understand it's incredibly uncomfortable.
Well, she says
I've not been in it.
It's so uncomfortable,
Clearly.
and she said it was horrible, and the coach was not meant for travelling in at all. Better a video.
And arguably, she could be in the saddle forever if all you require is a hologram.
That's absolutely true. Now, you've got a story in the Eye that you wanted to pick up on.
Yeah, so I was at Trooping the Colour, and I came out then onto into Trafalgar Square and then tried to get down Whitehall, and it was absolutely packed, uncomfortably so. The police were, you know, trying to keep us in. I think they didn't anticipate the numbers. And I've never actually experienced something like that, and it very much made me think of the Champions League fans in Paris just last weekend and how they were kettled in, and then there was tear gas, and they finally apologised, UEFA. But being in a big crowd, now clearly that for some people is absolutely where it's at, the sort of adrenaline, the togetherness, but it can be uncomfortable, and they're saying there's going to be yet more crowds this weekend, no matter the weather, more than 1 million to hit London. And I just hope the police are ready for this and we know how to handle it. A lot of roads are going to be shut off, so if you're looking to travel through central London, don't do it by car. I tried the bike a couple of days ago and had really quite a lot of success.
We've managed a traffic report and a weather report, as well as a newspaper review. You guys are very professional, and I am going to see you in the next hour. But for the moment, thanks both very much indeed.